My boss made me sit alone in a glass-walled boardroom for 2 full hours on the day I was supposed to get promoted. No explanation, no running late text, nothing. Just me, a jug of stale water, and the feeling that someone on the other side of that smoked glass was laughing. I went in there thinking I was finally going to hear the words I'd been killing myself for. By the time he actually opened the door, the promotion itself was the last thing on my mind. I'm not the guy who makes scenes at work. For 6 years, I was the reliable one, the one who stayed late, fixed other people's mistakes, carried the blame when projects slipped because I didn't want my team to get hammered. I answered emails at midnight, picked up calls on weekends, and I never once complained in a way that reached HR. I honestly believed that if I just kept my head down and did the right thing, someone upstairs would notice. In our company, that someone was Mark, my boss. Director of operations, mid-40s, smooth talker, the kind of guy who uses your first name in every sentence like he's read a book on leadership. He loved words like ownership and initiative. And every year during my review, he'd give me some version of the same speech. Ethan, you're the backbone of this team. You're not loud, but you're essential. Just keep doing what you're doing. Your time is coming. Last December, he finally said the words I'd been waiting for. We were in his office, lights low, because he liked the focus it created. He leaned back and said, "Next cycle, I want you in a manager role. Real title, real bump. You've earned it." I walked out feeling like I was 6 inches taller. I called my girlfriend in the parking lot and told her we could finally start looking for a bigger place. After that, I pushed even harder. I onboarded 2 new hires because Mark trusted my judgment. I handled client presentations he didn't have time for. When one of our biggest accounts almost walked after a reporting error, I spent an entire weekend fixing it so Mark could walk into Monday's call and say, "We've already resolved everything." He got the praise. I got a quick nod on the way back to my desk. I told myself it didn't matter. The title was coming. The money was coming. The respect would follow. Promotion decisions were supposed to be finalized by the first week of April. On Monday morning, Mark dropped by my desk, tapped the edge with 2 fingers, and said, "Big day Wednesday. Block out 9 a.m. in the main boardroom. We'll go over your new responsibilities. Make it official." He said it casually, like it was already done. My heart was racing so hard I could feel it in my wrists. I showed up on Wednesday, stupidly early. Suit instead of my usual shirt and chinos. Shined shoes. Fresh haircut I definitely couldn't afford yet. I printed a short roadmap I'd been working on. Ideas for the team. Ways to improve handoffs. Reduce rework. No one asked me for it. I just wanted to walk in as the guy who was ready. The boardroom was one of those glass boxes in the middle of the floor. At 8:50, I walked in, set my folder down at the head of the table, and poured myself a glass of water to have something to do with my hands. People were still settling at their desks outside, mugs in hand, morning chatter, keyboards starting to tap. I watched Mark walk past the boardroom with his coffee, phone in hand. He glanced in, saw me, gave me a quick 2-finger salute, and kept walking. No problem, I thought. He's just grabbing something. 9 o'clock hit. Then 9:05. At 9:10, I sent him a message. "Hey, Mark, I'm in the boardroom whenever you're ready." It showed as delivered. No reply. Outside the glass, the office slipped into full motion. I watched people hurry into stand-ups. Watched our new hires walk by with laptops. Watched my own team glance toward the boardroom and then look away fast, like they'd been taught not to stare at animals in a zoo. Every minute felt heavier. My water got warm. My shirt collar suddenly felt a size too small. At 9:20, Mark came out of his office again with one of the senior managers from finance. They stopped right outside the boardroom. I could read the subject lines on the printouts in their hands. Mark laughed at something, shook his head, then turned, looked straight through the glass at me, and kept walking to another meeting room. No 1 sec. No, be right there. Nothing. Just eye contact and indifference. My phone buzzed. Not from him. My girlfriend. "How's it going?" I stared at the screen for a few seconds and typed, "Waiting to go in." I almost added a smiley face, but it suddenly felt fake. I deleted it before I hit send. By 9:30, my initial excitement had drained into something tighter and uglier. I started counting the seconds between the noises outside, just to have something to focus on. The whir of the copier, the clack of someone's heels. All of it reached me through the glass, but I felt completely cut off. I sent Mark one more message. Still in the boardroom. Should I reschedule? Again. Delivered. Again. Nothing. By the time the clock on the wall hit 10 IO, my folder of ideas looked ridiculous, sitting there in front of me like a kid's science project someone had forgotten to pick up. My palms were sweating. I kept replaying the last 6 years in my head. Every weekend email, every no worries, I've got it, that kept someone else from getting in trouble. It all looked different from that chair. At 10:05, the door finally opened. Mark stepped in, still on his phone, still smiling at whoever was on the other end. He closed the door with his foot, dropped into the chair across from me, and only then ended the call. "Sorry to keep you waiting," he said, like he'd been 5 minutes late, not more than an hour. "You know how crazy these mornings get." I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized this wasn't disorganization. It was a choice. Mark didn't even pretend to hurry. He leaned back, straightened his cuffs, and gave me this relaxed, practiced smile, like he was doing me a favor by finally acknowledging my existence. I sat there, trying to keep my breathing even, trying not to show that the 2 hours in that glass box had done something to me I couldn't quite undo. "So," he said, tapping the table with a pen he'd taken from my folder without asking, "let's talk direction." Direction, not promotion. My stomach dropped before he even finished the sentence. He glanced at the glass wall behind me instead of looking at my face. "We've been reviewing leadership fits across departments, making sure every role is aligned with future goals. Corporate poetry, I'd heard it 100 times. It always meant someone was getting screwed." Then he dropped it, casual as a weather report. "We've decided to go in another direction for the manager position." I felt my fingers curl under the table. Meaning we're giving the role to Cody. Cody, the guy who had been here 9 months. 9 months. A guy who once asked me what an RFP was. A guy who wore loafers without socks and said "circling back" like it was punctuation. Cody, who Mark played golf with twice a week. I stared at Mark, waiting for the punchline. He just kept talking. "You've been invaluable, Ethan, truly. But leadership requires a different kind of presence. You're dependable, but you're not exactly loud. People don't naturally look to you." I swallowed once, slow. "You told me last quarter the role was mine." He gave a sympathetic wince. "I said you were in the running, and you were. But sometimes these things shift, you understand, right?" I didn't answer, not verbally, but something inside me moved, just a few inches, barely enough to notice, but I felt it, like the ground under my feet had quietly split. "And hey," he added brightly, as if throwing me a bone, "Cody's going to need someone steady under him, someone who can execute." He pointed his pen at me. "That's your strength. Execution. You're the guy who makes the ideas happen." Someone steady under him, a demotion disguised as stability. I tried to speak, but the words jammed in my throat. He mistook the silence for acceptance and continued, "Look, don't get emotional about this. Promotions aren't rewards. They're investments. We have to think strategically." I wanted to laugh. Instead, I said the only thing I could say without losing it. "You made me wait 2 hours today." Mark blinked like he genuinely hadn't expected me to bring it up. "I had back-to-back meetings. You know how mornings are." Then, with a little shrug, "Besides, patience is part of leadership." Something sharp twisted in my chest. Anger, humiliation, something older than both. But that was just the beginning. After the meeting, he dismissed me with a quick clap of his hands, like a teacher ending class. I walked out into the hallway, feeling stripped. People watched me from behind monitors, pretending not to. Word spreads fast in open offices. Faster when your boss has a mouth shaped like a megaphone. By Thursday, the shift was obvious. Tasks I'd always handled were suddenly being routed past me per Cody's decision. Meetings I used to lead no longer included me. Mark started sending me little quick favors that were clearly meant to put me back in my place. Fetching old data he knew I didn't have access to. Reviewing spreadsheets that weren't mine. Double-checking numbers Cody had messed up. Every trick designed to make someone quit, except spoken politely. The worst was Friday, a departmental check-in. 20 people. Fluorescent lights. Mark at the head of the table, Cody beside him. They were going over workload assignments when Cody said, with a self-satisfied grin, "I'd like Ethan to take on some of the admin-heavy tasks while I focus on strategic initiatives." Strategic initiatives. He said it like he understood what the words meant. Mark tilted his head toward me. "Flexibility shows growth. Think of it as supporting the bigger picture." I heard a few chairs creak, people shifting, uncomfortable. They all knew what was happening. But no one said a word. I felt a heat rise in my chest, the kind that usually pushes a person to say something they can't take back. I gripped the edge of the table until my knuckles whitened. Then I released it, slowly, one finger at a time. Because in that moment, I understood something. Mark wasn't just denying me a promotion. He was rewriting the last 6 years, turning my work into something small, something disposable, something he could assign to whoever helped him network better. He thought I'd break. He thought I'd bend like I always had. He thought I'd stay quiet. But he didn't know what I knew. He didn't know what I'd saved. And he definitely didn't know what it would cost him. That night, I stopped trying to be the hero. I went home, opened my laptop, and pulled up a folder I hadn't touched in years. A folder that started as protection and had quietly become a map of every violation Mark thought he'd buried. Screenshots, emails, time-stamped directives, client change orders he'd falsified, budget reallocations, threats hidden behind corporate language, the kind of evidence a company can't ignore. I stared at it all in the glow of my monitor, a quiet realization settling into my bones. Mark thought he'd humiliated me. He had no idea what humiliation looked like. Not yet. The thing about collected evidence is that it doesn't feel powerful while you're gathering it. Back then it felt like paranoia, or maybe self-defense. A private record I kept because something deep in my gut told me that one day I'd need it. That day arrived faster than I expected. By Monday morning, Mark was already escalating. I walked into the office and found a new task list waiting on my chair. Not emailed, not assigned through any official channel. Just printed and dropped, like homework. At the top, in Mark's handwriting, "Need this by EOD, M." Every item on it was something Cody had screwed up the week before. Numbers that didn't match, client notes missing, deliverables mislabeled. Work that wasn't mine, had never been mine, and was now being handed to me like punishment. I stood there staring at the page, and for the first time in 6 years, I didn't feel afraid. I just felt done. Mark noticed me holding the list as he walked in with his coffee. "Morning, Ethan," he said in that sing-song voice managers use when they're pretending to be cheerful. "Got your marching orders there. Shouldn't take you more than a few hours if you stay focused." I met his eyes, really met them, and something in my expression made his smile flicker. "I'll handle what's appropriate," I said quietly. He blinked, confused at the tone. "Everything on that list is appropriate." "No," I said, folding it once cleanly. "It isn't." He opened his mouth to push back, but before he could, one of the VPs walked by, and he snapped into polite professional mode. Fake smile, small laugh, nod of greeting. When the VP disappeared, he dropped the act. "Careful, Ethan," he murmured. "Attitudes like that don't get rewarded." I felt a cold, steady clarity settle into me. "I'm not asking for rewards," I said. "I'm asking for accuracy." His jaw tightened. We both knew what he heard in that sentence. The office carried on around us. Keyboards clacking, phones ringing, people pretending not to listen. But in that brief silence between us, something shifted. Mark wasn't talking to the person he thought I was. I wasn't playing the role he'd written for me. And for him, that was the first warning. For me, it was the first breath of air I'd had in months. But he wasn't done. By lunch, Cody was swaggering around the office, making comments loud enough for everyone to hear. Transitioning duties is always messy, he said while leaning near the coffee machine. Some people take longer to adjust to change. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because within those same hours, I sent an email. A quiet, simple, devastating email to HR, to compliance, to the regional director, and to corporate oversight. In it, I didn't rant, I didn't accuse, I didn't even mention the promotion. I simply attached a zipped folder titled Documentation Regarding Repeated Operational and Ethical Violations. MR. Director. No commentary, no exaggeration, just facts. Clear, organized, time-stamped, irrefutable. Inside were 6 years' worth of everything Mark thought no one would notice. Screenshots of emails where he instructed us to falsify delivery dates. Voice messages saved from his motivate or replace them speeches. PDF exports of client change orders he altered without approval. Budget reallocations that didn't match accounting reports. Slack messages where he threatened job security in corporate-friendly language. And yes, notes on favoritism so blatant it read like satire. I didn't press send and notify. I pressed send silently. Then I closed my laptop, walked to the break room, and made myself coffee. At 2:17 p.m., the silence broke. 3 people from corporate walked into the office, not casual, not unannounced, not smiling. They went straight to the glass conference room. One of them closed the blinds, which had literally never happened in my 6 years there. At 2:23, Mark's phone rang. He froze mid-sentence during a conversation with Cody. He listened. His face drained one shade at a time. He glanced at me, then away, then back again, and then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. He disappeared into the conference room. Cody tried to follow, but HR held out a hand and stopped him cold. The office fell into that strange hush where people type loudly to pretend they're not eavesdropping. Every minute stretched. The blinds stayed shut. The air felt thick. 20 minutes passed. 30. 40. When the door finally opened, Mark didn't come out looking angry or arrogant. He came out looking small, the kind of small that only happens when someone realizes their reputation won't save them. HR flanked him as they walked to his office. He kept one hand on his forehead like he was holding it together, physically. Cody stood frozen near the printer, clutching a stack of papers like a shield. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I didn't speak. But inside me, something uncurled, slow, steady, inevitable. For the first time, I wasn't the one standing alone in a glass room, and they thought I was gone. I wasn't. When Mark's door finally shut behind the HR team, the office held its breath. No one said a word, but everyone felt the same electric truth, humming under the fluorescent lights. Something irreversible had happened. I didn't go near his office. I didn't crane my neck. I didn't ask questions. I just kept working, calm, steady, the way I always had. Only now the weight that had lived under my ribs for years was gone. 2 hours later, HR sent out a brief email. Effective immediately, Mark R. will be stepping away from his role as Director of Operations. Interim leadership will be assigned in the coming days. No explanation, no gratitude, no farewell gathering with store-bought cake. Corporate didn't even dress it up. That alone told the whole story. Cody tried to pretend everything was normal for the rest of the day. He stationed himself at his desk, answering emails with frantic speed, laughing too loudly at jokes no one made, but his hands shook, and every so often he glanced at Mark's empty office like he expected him to come back and fix everything. He didn't. By Friday morning, Cody's badge access had been revoked. Another email hit the inbox. We appreciate Cody's contributions during his time with us. That was it. 2 lines, An entire career erased with the same cold politeness Mark used to erase mine. The office whispered all morning. People peeked over monitors. Someone said they saw Cody crying in his car before driving off. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smirk. I didn't even feel vindictive. I just felt quiet. A quiet I hadn't had in years. Around noon, the regional director called me into a meeting room. She wasn't smiling, but she looked almost relieved to see me. "Ethan," she said, folding her hands, "I won't pretend we didn't fail you, but I'll be direct. We want you to step into the manager role, effective immediately. You've earned it more than anyone." 6 years ago, that sentence would have meant everything. It would have been the moment I finally felt seen. But sitting there now, all I felt was distance, like she was offering me a key to a house I no longer lived in. "Thank you," I said, "but I've already accepted an offer somewhere else." Her eyebrows shot up. "May I ask where?" "A company that didn't need a crisis to recognize my work." She exhaled slowly. "I can't say I'm surprised." When I walked out of that meeting room, I felt taller. Not in the proud way, but in the unburdened way. Like I'd finally stepped into a version of myself I should have been years ago. My last week passed quietly. Colleagues came by with small, good luck smiles. A few apologized without using the word sorry. Jenna from compliance gave me a thumbs up she probably wasn't technically allowed to give. Mark never came back for a final goodbye. He didn't pack his stuff in front of anyone. HR must have arranged after-hours pickup. Cowards prefer empty rooms. On my final day, I stayed late, not because I had to, but because I wanted a moment alone before closing that chapter. The office was dark, except for the glow of a few desk lamps left on by accident. I grabbed my mug, my jacket, my notebook, and headed downstairs. When I pushed the glass door open, the cool air hit my face, and that's when I saw him. Mark, standing by the curb with a cardboard box in his arms. The box wasn't even full, just a few picture frames, a couple of books, and the sad desk plant he always forgot to water. He looked older, smaller, like the world had finally stopped bending around him. He saw me. I saw the moment he realized I wasn't being pulled down with him. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said quietly, "You did this." I walked closer, stopping at a comfortable, unafraid distance. "No, Mark," I said. "You did." He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. He looked down at the box, then back at me. "What are you going to do now?" he asked. "Live," I said simply. I stepped around him, walked to my car, and didn't look back, not once. On Monday, I started my new job, a higher title, better pay, a team that actually listened, a boss who respected my time. They valued my ideas on day one. No glass rooms, no waiting, no humiliation disguised as leadership lessons. And every evening when I drove home, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet kind that means your life finally fits you. Some people think revenge is loud, slammed doors, shouted words, explosions. But they're wrong. The loudest revenge is silence, a door that closes once, a life that moves forward without needing permission. Mark thought he broke me that morning in the boardroom. He didn't. He just freed me. And now I don't wait in glass rooms for anyone.